CMMS Radio talks about all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, focused on maintenance management. It's the people, the process, and the culture that make your CMMS journey a success. There he is, folks. He's on screen. It's Paul Lachance. He is the Chief Industry Strategist, Technologist, and Evangelist with deep experience in the manufacturing and industrial software sector. Paul previously built and led a major EAM CMMS platform. It was Bigfoot CMMS. I remember because I used to compete against that thing, and I loved it, if I can be totally transparent here. It later became Asset Essentials, which is now part of Brightly Software, and ultimately Siemens. Brightly Software is a Siemens company. So Paul has firsthand experience building software in this space, and today Paul works with Software Equity Group, an investment banking firm focused on the software sector. Think SaaS, software as a service, where he works closely with manufacturing and industrial technology companies that are exploring growth investments or potential exits. He's an expert on that as well. I had a chance to review this new SEG manufacturing and industrial software report. It looks great. It's 43 pages in length. Paul, let's dive into it and jump into some of the key findings. Welcome back to CMMS Radio, my friend.
Greg, it's always great to see you, my brother. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Well, look, I want to jump in with some questions. We can't cover the entire report, but we can kind of dip our toes in and put a little bit of color and flavor around some of the discoveries in this report. It's a comprehensive report, and it gives you a lot of angles for everyone out there that wants to check this out to understand whether you're a technologist yourself. It's even interesting for customers that use and want to understand these technologies, where they're going. So right away, you spent a lot of time studying and writing about the manufacturing sector itself. Even before we talk about the technology, what is your pulse on the industry right now, and what are the headwinds and tailwinds shaping manufacturers today?
Well, I don't think it's going to be any surprise to you or the smart listeners and watchers of CMMS Radio, but the manufacturing sector is, I would describe as challenging at best. There are persistent operational pressures, tariff policies all over the place, messing up with trade. If you look at the PMI, and we get into this in the report, and there's more of a description, the PMI is the Purchasing Managers Index, but really what it is a good barometer that measures the sort of strength of the manufacturing sector. And it's been in the tank for much of the last several years due to the volatility we've seen, and for a variety of reasons. It's kind of climbed out of it a little bit over the last 2 months, but I think that's short-lived. Especially with what's going on in the Middle East right now. So, that's messing additionally with supply chain. We have, and related, we also have like macro challenges, the labor shortage, or I should say the aging workforce, as well as the resulting skills gap. We used to talk about that a lot in recent years. It's still a problem and will be a problem for a long time. So there are really big headwinds in the manufacturing sector. I've always said, I don't care if it's really great times in manufacturing or it's challenging times. If you're a smart manufacturing organization, technology is how you get around. You can't control tariff policy. You cannot control the aging workforce, but you can use technology. And I think CMMS, EAM are great tools that can help solve for those challenges.
Absolutely. So you've been writing about, researching, and studying this sector for literally decades at this point. And that's a good thing because we get lots of perspective to carry from, let's say, the mid to late 90s all the way up until now. There's been a lot of kind of movement and improvement. Basics haven't changed all that much, but what's your take on what's happening in the industrial technology market right now? And I'm going to add a little layer to this. I just came off of a great conference. I was at NFMT East last week out in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's the National Facilities Management and Technology Show. And it's a long-standing show. It's been around 25 plus years. And I heard a lot of things that I can't even talk about. So I'm really interested in your answer on this.
Yeah, NFMT is a great show. I've lectured at that show in the past. And like you, and I've got the gray hair to prove it, I've been around for a lot of these technology adoption cycles we've been in. And there are those software companies that were there before a shift and after a shift. History always repeats on this front. So, like, if you look back at examples, and some of your listeners may not, we say words like DOS or Windows or those kind of things. I mean, there was a thriving series of businesses back in that were based in Windows, PC on premise. You don't remember most of those because when it switched to the cloud, a lot of those companies disappeared. And so we're seeing the same thing. We saw it in CMMS. I mean, you saw in the old days, you had MP2 and those types of products. Cloud comes around, and then you've got maintenance connection, first early generation cloud. You had us, Bigfoot CMMS, eMate, and those kinds of companies that, we became the early generation cloud. But every technology cycle we see, mobile was another one, Upkeep, they were the first mobile first solution, readily marketed mobile first solution. They were able to take advantage of that technology shift.
Yep.
And now we're seeing in this AI inspired influence, especially with the intersection of the digital and physical world, you see these amazing new companies like MaintainX and Traction and Limbo. And there's too many for me to name that are taking advantage of this type of technology. So I think in general, companies that are looking and seeing these technology shifts and realizing that history always repeats, and you got to study history. It really helps you make sense of where the future is. They're the ones that will be the next generation of category leaders.
Absolutely.
AI being at the front of all that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're spot on. And with AI being, it's clearly becoming a force in industrial software. How do you think AI is actually showing up in manufacturing environments? So aside from the technology itself, how is it showing up in the environments where we want to make the impacts and make a difference?
Yeah, I mean, AI is obviously permeating all aspects of society, and it is a challenging topic. It's a polarizing topic in many ways. I love manufacturing for a lot of reasons. Manufacturing always sees things in more of a practical way. Like, they're not gonna believe the marketing fluff of some crazy AI generative AI tool that. No, they're looking for practical examples. Matter of fact, I think the first thing that's important, and when you mention the word AI has many things. It's predictive analytics. It's computer vision, quality management systems using computer vision to analyze parts coming off a line to see are there quality defects. All kinds of optimization algorithms around production scheduling or supply chain optimization. Anomaly detection, so condition-based monitoring, digital twins, and yes, generative AI, co-pilots, that type of stuff is starting to show up in manufacturing applications. And also this stuff we call agentic AI, which I think is really going to be an exciting next layer. But you really have to think about the broad use of AI, and not just for the sake of AI. It's what is it doing to make manufacturing managers, the people on the front lines, the maintenance people, how's it making their life easier? I do think, though, if you look at all of this, one of the most exciting things that's starting to happen in the sector is this layer of the AI orchestration, or the intelligence layer that's starting to float on top of the software applications. And that's an area that I think is just starting to take shape.
I think one thing I want to hear from you on is within the manufacturing environment, there's a metric that a lot of manufacturers tend to focus on, whether it's right or wrong metric for them. I want to talk about OEE.
Mm-hmm.
And give me some of your take on that as a real world example, because you've gathered a lot of info on that as well.
Well, yeah, and OEE is one of many metrics that measure the how well a manufacturing organization or a line or so whatever it may be is functioning. But I think it's probably a good segue or good framework to discuss how AI can really help. I'll use a real world example, but let me explain a concept briefly. And we get into this in the report in gory detail.
Yeah.
But you've had historically these traditional applications in a manufacturing organization. Your CMMSradio, CMMS being a core pillar, and I'll throw in EAM because it's all part of the same concept. But you have MES and you have quality management systems and warehouse management systems, supply chain. It goes on and on. There's all these different types of software that are functioning in a manufacturing organization. And when you also start to look at this growing, what I like to call the connected data intelligence layer. And it's this sort of like this framework, and you hear the phrase unified namespace, that is starting to contextualize and normalize and manage that information that's coming from the shop floor, all
Right.
that raw data. Where you can get it into a place where it's apples to apples comparison, so you can really make sense of it. But it's all these traditional applications with all their data. Your work order system in your CMMS has tremendous information in there. So the more and more we can share information across these different types of solutions, I think the more intelligent our solutions can be. And then there's this exciting layer that's starting to float on top of that AI orchestration layer. And I like to think, and this is just a growing concept. It's like the exciting times we would have had talking about early in the cloud era or early in the mobile era.
Yep.
That, this is going to take shape over time, but you got to pay attention, especially when you think about that history repeats. But this AI orchestration or unified operations intelligence layer, that's where you're going to start to see things like, next generation BI analytics. That's where you're going to be able to ask questions. Instead of pull up dashboard after dashboard, you can ask a question. What is the impact? What's causing my drop in OEE? It's where your agentic AI is going to live. And I'll use a real world example. So OEE, you said OEE. OEE is a great one. So let's just say you're a plant manager. You show up at your desk. It's Monday morning. You got a sticky right on your monitor that says OEE slipped over the weekend. Not sure what's going on. It might be production line 1. We need to figure out what's going on because we had some quality issues and whatever. The message you don't want to see when you show up for work. And so what would that manager do? They'll sit down, they'll go into their work order system, their CMMS, they'll look at what work orders came up, they'll go into their dashboard and their quality system. Maybe they can look at reports in their MES. A couple hours later, they got to meet with some other people and figure out what's going on. Or in this modern era where this next generation AI orchestration layer that's sort of floating above this, instead you've got an email in your inbox. And that email said, and this is where agentic AI, this is a promise of that. It says, hey, I noticed OEE slipped over the weekend. I went ahead and I checked all the work orders. I checked the vibration readings on the IoT devices connected to that system. I checked the quality management system, and I noticed there's some work orders over there that indicated some defects. I looked at historical work orders to see what caused this, and I think the fix is X, Y, and Z. Oh, and by the way, I needed some parts. We're going to need some parts to replace the bearing set that the last time this happened on. And I went ahead and got a requisition in there. Humans can do this. We know this. We sit down and we look through these dashboards. But the promise of AI to look at those things and deliver us actionable information so that we can address these kind of capabilities that's where I'm really excited about what's happening. We talk a lot about this in the report and where this is going. But let me pause for a minute here. I mean, you're an old school guy. You've been around this stuff for a long time. And humans are really important to keep in the loop here. But this type of technology, I think, can really make our lives easier.
I agree. And I think, for a lot of people out there, I'm kind of a skeptic and they think I'm beating up on AI. And what I'm really doing is trying to make people pay attention to how is it really working? Is it really working? Is it accurate? Does it have guardrails? What I love about machine learning, LLM, and these programmatic things, right? Like I could almost leave the AI out of it. I love that it can augment our capability of sifting through data and capturing what's meaningful, as long as you train it and it's doing the right things and we have a way to essentially babysit it and keep it in some guardrails. I love the way it can do this work for you. I'm more so concerned that people use it as an easy button. I want it to be scrutinized along the way because it is great technology when it works. I've got a really good friend. His name is Andy Gager. He's with AMG International, and he's a maintenance and reliability professional. And he always says to me, he says, technology is great until you need it. And what he really means by that is, are you doing the work to maintain it, use it, leverage it? And are you making sure and verifying that it's accurate? With that being in place, I think it's great because I kind of want to move to this next segment around the strategic debate that's happening in industry on who's going to control this orchestration layer that you're describing that I think is so powerful and meaningful. I mean, it reminds me of when we would do MVC data layers to fix a bunch of nonsensical technology that can now flow and function properly. This is going even further than that based on the way you're describing it, where it's pulling and parsing and putting things together and telling you something in 5 minutes, maybe potentially, that would have taken you 5 hours to figure out. So I love that. But talk about that strategic debate that's happening in industry over who's going to control that orchestration layer.
Yeah, it's a really good debate, and I fully agree with you. For the record, Greg, you want to lose your job quick. You hit the easy button, and you provide reports or decisions are made that started with bad data or bad context to that data. AI technology in general does not solve problems. It makes them happen faster if you don't go and look at the underlying challenges underneath that. But to answer your question, yes, there is an interesting debate that's going on in the sector. The systems of record, your EAMs, your CMMS, your MES, they're going to be around forever. That's where people live day to day. That's where your data entry is happening. That's where you're getting your work orders. That's where there's amazing knowledge. The systems of engagement, which again, a good CMMS has system of record. You're doing your work orders, doing all that, but you also have good reporting and dashboards and insights in there. What the system of action, where you're seeing semi-autonomous and autonomous actions, your agentic AI, that floating above, where that extra level of intelligence, that is where the biggest question marks are happening. And I see that whoever has access to more data, not just from your core system, but you have access to what's the sales orders next week, because I'm going to have to shut down the line to do preventive maintenance to solve that from happening in the future. Well, if your EAM can have access to a broader plethora of data to make more intelligent decisions, well, then you are in a better position to have smarter agentic AI to help you really get assistance from these agents, as opposed to just another report that's useless to you. There are definitely new players coming in that are kind of floating above, and I think we're going to see this stuff shake out. But if I was a CMMS vendor today, I would really be paying attention to all these technology trends that are happening. And you have to make the same way you had to pay attention. You've seen this firsthand. Mobile, jumping from Windows to cloud, like you just go back in history and you can go all the way back to the dawn of computers. The first generation CMMS were on mainframes run by the military way back. They were still just doing work orders back then, the same way we are today. But every technology shift, if you're paying attention to what's going on and you start to take advantage of this technology, you will have a better CMMS and your customers will be happier for it.
I agree with that. And as you're describing it, we know the technology is a tool. It's a question of how you use it, how you apply it, and how you watch what the data really means. Is it contextual? Do you have the standardization? So assuming all those basic principles, those fundamentals are in place, what starts to happen, rather than the noise out there and, ooh, we've got this nice new feature, and hey, we've got AI in our EAM, and we've got AI inside of our CMMS. The real question is, what is it doing? Is it actually helping? And is it accurate? Is it actionable, like you said? That's what we want. And I think back to the early days, for example, when I was in the industry and co-founder of a solution where it was the simplest of things that we were solving. And it was so exciting because it made a difference. It saved time. It gave better visibility to these data points. It helps with customer interaction so you can be better vendors for your customers because you have technologies that tell you all these things. And then what invariably happens is you get these opportunities to improve through listening to your clients and listening to the market. And like you said, for all the companies out there, watching the technology trends. Some of them are a little bit of a fake out. Some companies out there are going to be doing it right because they put a lot more time into what they're doing before they released it. Instead of just slapping an AI badge on what they have in a CMMS or EAM offering, they made it substantial. You've also got a tremendous number of technology companies that are quasi consultants that have add-on technologies that will leverage this AI to do that work for you on the other system that you have. Does that make sense what I'm talking about?
You're spot on, and I think, and this is a perfect segue into the last area that we talk about both in the report and whatnot. Is you can't just say, "Oh, we have AI." If you're a CMMS vendor, it was exactly what you just said. You just can't slap an AI badge on things. Yes, you want to leverage AI, but not because you're leveraging AI. You're doing it because it's an opportunity to reduce downtime or to improve OEE or to find a way that you can't replace these amazing retiring men and women when we don't have skilled people to take their place. So artificial intelligence and software in general is all about better outcomes for your customers. But and the advice I always give to, I meet with a lot of CMMS vendor creators in this modern generation. You got to continue to control mission critical workflows. What are the maintenance people doing? How do they interact? You got to have the power to optimize that. You are going to be a stronger and smarter CMMS company if you can generate proprietary operational data. Anytime you have really good quality data that's underneath all your system, because of everything we were talking about earlier, that data is so essential to this AI orchestration layer. And also even things like artificial intelligence isn't just for your software. It's you can do smarter things for your company itself. Like there are great tools for helping you improve your operations of your organization. And again, I don't want to replace people with AI, but I do want to free up people for more creative time that they can go out and investigate. What if we created a new module? Or what if we tried to go into different markets? Or we could improve the quality of our documentation? All these things we can do through using these tools. But if you're doing those things, you're generally building a smarter CMMS company. And that'll make you a more valuable company from the investment banking world where I live. But most importantly, and I think where you come from, and I know you well enough, it's your manufacturing customers that will benefit by all of this, what you're doing, because you're just creating better outcomes for them by creating smarter technology.
Absolutely. And that can actually start to permeate or relate to other markets. And that's what happens with a lot of these technology companies is you see this. I'm always interested in specificity. How were you born? What were you really focused on? What were you really trying to solve? And how has that changed? Because it will change. You're not necessarily going to be one thing if you're a CMMS or an EAM. Yes, you're a CMMS. Yes, you're an EAM. But you might be oil and gas. And then one day, somebody that was working with your platform goes off to another part of the industry and they say, I really know this system. I loved it. It worked really well for what we're doing. I think it's adaptable. And now you start opening up new markets. And that's always a possibility. One thing I want to ask about is in your past, right? We talked about it early on with Bigfoot. And I always loved the name and how you approached it, how it was being brought to market. There was no, I don't want to go down that path, but I was just a fan of it, not just the name, but what you were doing. And then when the acquisition happened, but you follow the M&A and investment market very, very closely. And these are some of the things, like I hear things that I can't talk about, right? And I know you hear way more things that you can't talk about, but having built and sold your own CMMS company, and now that you're advising industrial software companies, and I must say advising well, what advice would you give founders trying to navigate this current moment when it comes to mergers, acquisitions, investment, PE money coming in, all that kind of stuff. Any general advice you could offer that we could impart to everyone?
Yeah. And I've been through it. I've been through it a couple times, and every time, and you know what it's like in life, you do things a couple times, eventually you get knocked around a little bit and you get a little smarter. Um, I think the main messages and education I like to give to the next generation of these amazing CMMS companies, and really any industrial software company, is remember, history always repeats. Just because you think you've got a kick-ass product today, you can't leave your head in the sand and ignore the technology trends that are happening. Because somebody who is a small fraction of your size, especially in this AI-inspired era, can come in and create a technology that is going to be competitive with you in a relatively short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So history repeats. And if you look at the companies before Windows and after, before cloud and after, before mobile and after, in this Industry 4.0 AI-infused world, you are going to see changes. Don't be a victim of that change. At the same time, if you are an established company and you've got a great, happy customer base, and you can start to utilize these technologies, and to your point, not an AI slap it on kind of thing so you can say, we've got AI. No, leverage AI to make your platform better, smarter. And then just focus on growing your company in a smart way. If you do those things, history shows you will continue to ride this wave that we're in right now. That will make you a stronger company today as you're running your company, especially when you can use things like artificial intelligence to improve internal operations. But it'll also make you a more valuable company should you want to either take a growth investment and really turbocharge your growth, or even exit the company altogether like I did. And my company ended up at Brightly and now Siemens, and it was an incredibly fun and awesome ride. But we just saw where the tea leaves are going. We jumped on that train and we rode it. So that's what our report is for. Our report is to show you all the framework of like what's going on in the sector. Where's the technology going? How is it impacting mergers and acquisitions? And it's to give, these next generation of people building these companies sort of a blueprint. And hopefully that's helpful. You read it, and if you have questions, they can reach out and talk to me. But that's where I'm coming from, because again, I love history and it repeats.
Yeah, and I listen, I have to thank you for what you do, because I think there's a really big advantage with where you've been and what you do now being kind of combined. And now you can take that agnostic viewpoint and say, hey, me, our different team players here at SEG, we understand these markets, and now we're just going to start helping everybody. Where you can let go of that one piece. And I relate to that a little bit, because I'm not tethered to anything in particular anymore. And you at least feel like you can make a difference. And if you're intentional about that, I think it's great. So I want to thank you, first of all, for making this time to come back with me and talk about this report on CMMS Radio. And I'd like to know, how do people get in touch with you? Should they just go to LinkedIn and find you and connect there? Or is there another place? And then I also need to know where they can find this awesome report.
Yeah, hopefully we can link it somewhere in there. But if you go to the Software Equity Group website, you can find me, Paul Lachance, on LinkedIn. There will be connections from there. But if you just go on the SEG website and look up the manufacturing report, should be prevalent. But hopefully we can get it linked. And to your point, Greg, you and I share that awesome. I have a dream job, because I get just to spend time researching and studying and overlaying my historical experience. That's what CMMS Radio is as well. You've lived it, and now you get to meet with all these awesome companies and see up front these amazing personalities building this software and have the wisdom of history in there. And, I'm having a lot of fun doing it. I know you are as well. Yeah. So thank you for your kind words, and right back at you, buddy.
Thank you very much. Paul Lachance, thanks for being here on CMMS Radio.
Thanks, Greg.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS from selection to implementation to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.